Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We are a global world working 7/24. Welcome to the Russ, Meek Speaks show. And today, I am Jean-Paul Thomas, a technology consultant, and I'm going to be talking about something that even if you hide in a cave, you cannot remove yourself from it. And that is AI technology and human beings. So I'm going to come at it from a different perspective because a lot of the hype that you hear is about the technology and what it's going to do to human beings. I want to talk about AI and what human beings can do with AI. So a little bit of background about me. Who am I and why am I here and how do I have the rights to talk about this stuff? I am a technology consultant. I've been active in the field for 55 plus years, so I've seen a lot of hype cycles. I've seen them come and go. My life experience tells me that we tend to operate in repeating circles. So something new comes about, we promote it, we build it up, we tear it down, we criticize it, but the circles and the cycles go on. So I'm a lifelong learner. I believe I try to learn something new every day. Some days I'm successful, some days I'm not so successful, but I try every day. So I'm going to be talking about AI and human behavior. And so I'm going to tell you a couple things. One, I am not a psychologist. I'm not formally trained. I'm not a behaviorist, so I don't have the letters behind my name. But I have learned a lot about human behavior because of the nature of what I do. I work with technology, and technology works if you start with people and you end with people. Technology is the meat in between, the two pieces of bread, people. So over the nearly 60 years of being in the technological world, I've seen a lot of human behavior as it relates to technology. So we're going to talk about that. And the technology specifically that we're going to talk about is artificial intelligence. So the name tells you a lot. It's artificial. Intelligence? Maybe, maybe not. So let's focus on behavior. So in order to deal with the question of behavior, I had to do a little bit of homework. So I picked up the dictionary and I said, please give me a definition of what is human behavior. So I'm going to look down at this and read you a portion of that definition. And it's terribly short because the full definition went on for a paragraph or more. But the essence of human behavior is a range of observable actions, reactions, and activities that humans do. So when we're talking about AI, the way you hear the hype now, we're really talking about AI relative to work, what you do for a living, how you earn your money. But AI is much more than that. AI shows up in a social situation. Fact is, AI is not really new. It's been a while. It's been around for a while. It's just that the way it's showing up now, it's in our face. A lot of new things happen every day, happen weekly, monthly. But we are so busy, we don't always notice these things until they get in our face. So what is AI? AI is something that is going to change our behavior. So let's put the AI aside for a moment and focus a little bit on that behavior. As a consultant, I have traveled the world. I've been on 5 of the 7 continents. Fact is, I was in Europe so much that one Christmas I did all my Christmas shopping in Europe. And I've noticed over time that behaviors fall into different subsets and categories depending upon where you are. So one of the things I've noticed about human behaviors is that there are what I call 3 great fears. And these fears show up no matter where I've been. So there's the fear of death. It's going to happen to all of us. There's the fear of change. This is the one we're going to focus on as we talk about AI. And then there's the fear of public speaking. Most people can get over that last fear, but it does take a little bit of work. So let's focus on the one about change. AI is just the latest version of a technology that is going to change the way we behave. And very specifically, change the way we behave at work, because work is very important to us. So when we talk about changing behavior, there's several different strategies on changing the behavior. A lot of people will tell you about the carrot versus the stick. In other words, I want you to change what you're doing, and if you change what you're doing, I'm going to reward you somehow. Financially, time off, vacations, promotions. Carrot versus the stick. Whereas if I say if you don't change, then bad things will happen to you. You'll get fired, you won't get the promotion. But there's another aspect of change, which is slow versus fast. Most people do not change as fast as the situation or the environment dictates. We tend to do change at our pace. And part of the problem that we're having today in society is that the actions of societies, of governments, of individuals are forcing us to change faster than we are comfortable with change. So now I've said you got to change, and I'm also saying, well, you got to change in a hurry because something else is forcing the speed. And then there's lasting change versus temporary change. So some changes you want to be long-term, other changes are just temporary based upon what the current situation is. As a manager, when I got promoted to be a manager before I became an independent consultant, one of the things I learned was fear will cause change, but it's not lasting change. So the carrot is the way to get lasting change. But I also discovered that you have to do it over time. You cannot tell people at 9 o'clock in the morning, I want you to behave differently at 10 o'clock in the morning, unless there is a very strong incentive to do so. They will change at 10 o'clock, but if you watch them by 11:30, they've gone back to the way they were before. Our society, especially as is now driven by technology, does not allow that slipping back to the way it was before. So we have to deal with the carrot versus the stick in terms of changing. We have to deal with the slow versus fast in terms of changing. And we also have to look at whether it's a temporary change or a long duration change. So let's focus on what AI is. AI is a technology. And why is it so important today? Because our society, and I say the society, which includes government and businesses, say we need to get faster. Why do we need to get faster? Well, that ties into the whole productivity efficiency thing. Everybody wants something right now. And the faster I can get it to you, the faster you can transfer money to me, or the faster I can go and do something else. So, what is AI specifically? I look at AI and I say there's a key difference with this technology than prior technologies. And that is, this technology allows for something that I call dynamic, real-time, situational decision making. So what is that? Okay. So we've had decision-making software before. It was classic, what we call decision tree. So if somebody sat down and figured out, if I'm doing a process from A to Z, how many yes or no decisions, how many true or false decisions, how many it's right or wrong decisions occurred. And then we structured and sequenced those yes or no binary type decisions, and we then coded it and poured cement over it. So the end result is, when you ran that program, it would always ask the same decisions in the same manner and come up with a yes or no answer. And then depending upon if it was yes, we went left. If it was no, we went right. But AI allows us now to move away from that static in the cement decision tree. It allows us to look at a number of variables that says, I'm still doing the same process, but now it's a little different, because something I was relying on yesterday when I ran this process is not present today. So rather than have someone come in and suddenly try and change the coding, AI allows us to look at that situation and say, oh, this variable has changed, so we have to decide differently today than we did yesterday. And we can do that by transaction. I like to look at AI, as I've been experimenting in my AI lab, as a liquid glue for technologies. So what do I mean by a liquid glue? AI allows us to tie together a lot of existing technologies, and we tie them together via the decision-making process. So I have lots of technology. For instance, I've got a dishwasher, I've got a microwave oven, I've got a stove, I've got a refrigerator, I've got a TV, I have a bunch of devices there. But if I want to use them with the emerging capabilities of AI, I can say, I want these things to happen in a certain sequence, and I don't necessarily have to physically go and do that. We're going to talk about agents a little bit later on, because that's another thing that's on the horizon. So AI says we will change, whether we like it or not. We will change as that technology takes hold. So your work patterns will change. So we have these things we call workflows now. We used to call them jobs, we used to call them tasks. We now call them workflows. So when you have a set of workflows, you're talking about accomplishing a specific task with an end objective, a series of steps in a particular order, and decisions that control the order of those steps. So, do we worry about AI? Yes, we worry about AI relative to our job. How do I know my job is safe? Well, I'll say, if you have a well-defined, repetitive job, well-defined and repetitive, then you're probably in the crosshairs of AI. How soon? Hard to say. If, on the other hand, your job is not the same from moment to moment or transaction to transaction or client to client, then right now there's no real worry about AI taking over your job at this point. Your job will also change because the skill set that we've had and relied on in the past will change. We traditionally have jobs where people are taught or learn how to do a particular set of individual tasks to accomplish a job. So if I'm talking about a painter, then the painter has to know how to mix the paint to check the thickness and appropriateness of the paint relative to the surface that he or she is painting. They need to know about the brushes. They need to know about the rollers. Well, as AI comes in, a lot of those, what I call grunt level or low level, necessary but not necessarily intellectually demanding tasks can be done by AI, and in some cases, limited cases currently, robots. Robots I'll talk about a little bit later. So the skill sets are shifting from the labor to the much more intellectual. The skill sets are also requiring you to have a broader understanding of the work that you're supposed to be doing. So that's a change. And then finally, we have to understand that there are some limitations to AI as we have it right now. If you listen to the hype, AI is everywhere. And to a certain extent, it is already everywhere. It's just not everywhere in the form that we are seeing it now. Historically, I could write a program to accomplish a specific function, and at some preset time, that program would run. That was an earlier version of AI. When I've done a little bit of research on the concept of AI, this is the third coming of AI. And why is it the third coming? Because simply we didn't have the technology in order to do it the way that we're presenting it now. So it's new, but at the same time, it's not really that new. Conceptually, it's kind of old. People have always asked the question, is there a way I can get something done without me physically having to do it? And so you'll see the culmination of that, which will be AI and robotics. But we'll get to that in a moment. So let's focus on several areas of humanity, human beings, and AI. People love routine. We're lazy, okay? That does not mean we're absolutely lazy, but we love the idea that I can learn something and then I can sort of intellectually coast for the rest of the way. I don't have to learn something new every day. That's kind of the laziness that I'm talking about. I'm not talking about absolute laziness. But people love routine. And if you doubt that, change somebody's routine and watch the reaction. People often define themselves, especially here in the United States, and I've seen this occur differently in other countries, but we define ourselves by what our job title is. And that can be good, that can be bad. Some people love their jobs. Fact is, they don't even see them as jobs. They see them as things they do, and they get compensated financially, or they get compensated in other ways. So some people love their jobs, some people hate their jobs. And the people who hate their jobs, well, they just haven't found a job or a vocation that they like. Technology has long been forcing change. And so I want to talk about technology from a historical perspective through right now. Technology was when we decided that we had to use something else to amplify our abilities. So physically, there's a lot of things we can do physically, but when it comes to a point where you need some sort of mechanical mechanism in order to do things that we cannot do physically. So earliest technology, fire. Accidental, once we learned how to create fire and control fire, that became our technology. Move a little bit farther along the line, club used as a hammer. That's technology. Now, with the club, obviously we started to entertain the idea that the club could be used positively or the club could be used negatively. As in, I will use the club to knock some things down, or I will use the club to knock another human being down. So our love-hate relationship with technology is deeply rooted in our species. As we moved into steam power, and then electrical power, and now we're in the age of digital power. So every time we take another step or another rung on that ladder of technology, it forces change, whether we like it or not. So earlier I mentioned something briefly about digital agents. And what exactly is a digital agent? Well, it's just a coded form of a human agent. Digital agent does the same thing. The difference is that with a digital agent, you don't actually see a human being. Fact is, you may not see anything. But if you look at the computers and you look at the networks, you will see signals going back and forth, and that could be a digital agent. So is the concept really that strange? No. We've been dealing with human agents for a long time. So now we've basically digitized it. And this is about the time that people go, wait a minute, there goes my job. Not necessarily. I'll come back to this a little bit later. So, a digital agent is different because now, unlike a program, we are giving the digital agent which is a program, authority. So what do I mean by authority? So if you're going to take a vacation and you say, I need to fly someplace, and once I get to that city, I need transportation to get to the hotel, I need to stay someplace, and then there are activities I want to do. Well, historically, that was done by a human being who had a job title of travel agent. Now, you don't necessarily need that human being because the software under the umbrella of AI can do all of those things for you. So this brings up the question of, what about me? What happens to me if I don't have to physically be there? Well, don't worry, you're not going away, because as much as people talk about what all the AI intelligence and what all the AI technology can do, I want you to remember this, because I'm going to come back to it at the end of this conversation. I want you to remember, human beings are not totally replaceable yet. And when I say yet, I'm talking about the foreseeable future. And I'm going to extend that foreseeable future to more than just the next 18 months. I'm saying probably the next 100 plus years. Human beings are not totally replaceable now. So I want you to calm down, take a deep breath, hang with me while I go into a couple more points. So, if the agent, the digital agent under the umbrella of AI can do some, maybe much of what I do, how much time do I have left before a lot of what I do gets replaced, and maybe even gets replaced to the point where people think I'm not necessary? It depends. What are you doing? Let's go back to a point I mentioned earlier. If you're doing a lot of repetitive, well-defined, seldom changing kind of work, you probably don't have much time. Somebody's going to figure out how to agentify. Yes, I just made that word up. Somebody's going to figure out how to agentify your existence relative to that job. That does not mean you cease to exist. It's just the job, which means you're probably going to have to switch jobs, because until the concept of universal basic income, or the Star Trek world where they never seem to use money at all, comes about, you're still going to exist. So, intellectual, what AI and AI agents, we've shifted from physical labor to intellectual labor. And that shift has been going on for the past 150, 200 plus years. How often do you see large groups of people doing physical labor? So you sit and stop for a moment and say, agricultural workers. Yes, that's probably one of the last areas where you're going to see large groups of people doing work. But even in the agricultural area, machinery is replacing a lot of that physical labor. So, does the machinery run itself? Well, currently, a lot of that machinery is run by a human being. Can the machinery run by itself? Yes, there are versions of machines on the farm that can run by themselves. But those are expensive machines, and they're not in wide use right now. Why? Because of the cost of the machines versus the cost of the labor. But I'm not going to get into all of that, because that's another whole conversation. I just want you to know that even when there are machines that can do work, even when those machines are capable of working by themselves, there's still a human being around. So you will see a human being either in starting the machine and setting it about its task, or in some cases you will see human beings fixing machines. Because currently we still don't have machines that can fix other machines. We have machines that assist us in fixing other machines. But there's no robot, there's no machine that says, oh, your car is broke, so therefore, if you leave it with me, I'll have it fixed when you come back. So, intellectual shifting of labor, which means now we have to do more thinking. Which machines? which technology, which programs, what are the conditions under which these technologies will work. So I talk about digital agents, but somebody has to figure out exactly what does that digital agent do, and how does that digital agent do it, and what are the requirements, what are the limitations. Because with digital agents, the issue of authority and liability, here comes the legal stuff, comes into large play. When I have a human being doing my reservations, I can call that human being at the last second and say, hey, we need to change. Because the speed of the human being gives me that opportunity. The speed of a digital agent may not give me that opportunity. Human being takes 30 minutes, 20 minutes to get something done. The digital agent, properly crafted and properly authorized, can get it done 15 seconds. Now, if I call up and say, hey, I need to make a change, I can still get the agent, the digital agent, or the human agent to do the change, but unseen to me, there are timing lags behind the scenes that I'm not aware of, such as when the digital agent makes that reservation, the charge to my credit card shows up initially to me. I now know, if I'm keeping track of my credit limit, hey, I'm $1,000 less than I was before. But the actual posting of that $1,000 to my account may not occur until later. So suddenly when I say AI changes everything, now we also have to look at what's happening right in front of us, plus what is happening behind the scenes. And behind the scenes, there are more time lags than we realize. So, if I give the agent authority, then that means they can charge against my credit card. Okay, suddenly I've got to make sure there are limits to what the agent can do. Same thing I used to do with a human being, but I kind of took it for granted with a human being that they wouldn't charge my airfare and charge my Uber or my rental car or my hotel, and oh, by the way, charge a TV for themselves. Now, I'm not saying that the digital agent will do that, but if the digital agent is not crafted correctly and tested, then things happen. I apologize to everybody who's named Murphy, but there's this thing called Murphy's Law that says if something can go wrong, odds are it'll go wrong. And with a digital agent, because of the speed with which that digital agent works, if it goes wrong in a hurry. And because we may be relying on the reliability, the appropriateness, the accuracy of a digital agent, we may not check until it's too late. So the lawyers will sort all of this out. Now, interesting concept that's been around for a while, and some people swear by it. It's called multitasking. And I've seen studies, and I watched this process, and as I understand it, I'm going to put this on me. I can't multitask. I can start multiple activities, and I can monitor those activities, but my brain just does not allow me to switch fast enough. So I've come to a consensus that when people talk about multitasking, what they're really doing is they're monitoring activities, or what I call serial fast task switching. So I spend a few seconds looking at this item, I spend a few seconds looking at that item, and as long as I'm seeing the right lights, the right buzzing sounds, et cetera, everything's fine. But the second something goes wrong, my attention now has to focus on that task which is not going right. With digital agents, we may actually have the first opportunity to truly multitask via digital agents, or to put it a different way, clone ourselves so that I physically can be in one place doing one thing while my digital clones are somewhere else doing something else for me. So the multitasking thing may really start to show up for real. Now, you as the individual, I've said AI is going to change a lot of stuff. I've said AI is already here. It's seeping in all over the place. We haven't always seen it or recognized it for what it is. So, how do you as the individual deal with this particular form of technology? Because I called it a liquid glue. It's going to allow us to bring a lot of technologies together in a way that we won't see all of the technologies. Right now, we have to individually touch and activate and instigate certain technologies in order for things to be done. AI, digital agents, are going to make that distinction blend into the background. We use technology when the technology blends into the background. Remember I said we're lazy. We don't want to have to figure out how to make this technology work. We want it to just work. So, behaviorally, that brought me to the next trip to the dictionary. And I was looking at the difference between two words. They sound very similar, and in hearing them, I've often had people mix the two together. So I'm going to talk about adopting and adapting. Very close in spelling, two different words, different meanings. So adopting says you are actively choosing to do something. So we think about adopting children or adopting a new habit. You have to decide that. Nobody else decides that for you. Whereas adapting can be forced onto you. You may not agree with it, you may not be comfortable with it, but you don't have any choice. And so the way we implement technology a lot of times is we force it on you. So all the hype about AI is where it is because a lot of people and an unbelievable, incredible amount of money has been poured into AI. And the goal of this is to reduce labor. Now we call it labor saving, but let's be practical. When it comes from a business person, it's about labor reduction. Translation, head count. The lower my head count, the lower my cost, the bigger my profit. We will sell it to you as labor saving, time saving, an option, make your life better. But if it's coming from business, it's about reducing head count. So, are you an adopter or are you adapting? Because if you're adopting, then you are consciously embracing change. If you are adapting, you are reacting to change. I've been in technology for 5.5 decades. I get nervous when things are not changing because the very nature of technology has always been about change. And so when things slow down and nothing's changing, I'm going like, oh, something's got to be wrong here. But this particular technology of AI is coming at us with a speed faster than we can digest and understand it. It's coming at us across so many fronts, the bandwidth, how much can we deal with at any given moment in time, that it's difficult for people to deal with it. And quite often, we've got the stick and not the carrot in terms of forcing us to change. So, if you want to lessen the stress, then you need to start moving to the mode of adopting AI, learning what it is, how to work with it. The thing I find most fascinating about AI is that this is the first technology that I've seen that the learning process, the learning threshold is very low. It will actually teach you how to use it if you sit down and merely start to ask questions. And so there are different ways that you can engage in this. ChatGPT is probably the best known one out there. Sitting down at a computer and simply start asking it questions. And you can ask it to ask you questions to help you learn how to work with the technology. I've not seen any technology like that. So this is what's truly different. The fact that it brings together a lot of technologies, pushes them into the background so that you don't have to focus on them, and it seems like it thinks. It's not really thinking. It's doing statistical pattern matching. So what exactly is that? It looks at the words that you give it, and it says, how frequently does this combination, does this sequence of words occur? And so when it, quote, understands the topic you want to talk about, which again, it uses its training to, quote, understand that, it then says, oh, I have some sense, digital sense, not human sense, not biological sense. I have some digital sense of what you're talking about. Then it looks for word pattern matching and gives you a response. So if you give it something that it can understand, then you can start a conversation. I'm somewhat surprised and somewhat taken aback by the ways that some people are using AI. And some professions, marriage counselors, psychologists, and other people are starting to be more concerned because they're finding that people are feeling more comfortable in talking with AI than they are with talking to other people. But again, I will say, this ain't new. I mean, I've seen people sitting at a table in a public space talking to each other without actually talking because they were talking via DM, direct messaging, on their cell phones. And I found that startling. You're sitting next to somebody, why aren't you orally, verbally talking to that person sitting next to you? But society and changes occur. So, adopt versus adapt. Are you being pressured? Some people are being socially pressured by their friends. Part of being cool on the edge is using the newest, latest thing. Okay, well, if that's the pressure you're feeling, it's probably easier for you to adopt than it is to adapt. But even there, some people still react. I'm not a big person of social media because I have too many other things to try and keep up with. So I am social media naive, but I do talk with people who help me keep up with that. But I'm not that actively involved. Now, are you being pressured by your job? Different type of pressure. Because people say, I got bills to pay. I need that job. Even though I may hate that job until I can find some other job, I need a job because I've got bills to pay. I cannot go to the grocery store and get something for free. Universal basic income, which has all kinds of issues associated with it, still doesn't exist. So I need a job. But if you're being pressured by businesses, and in recent weeks, I've seen several well-known companies have taken a position of you will upskill, nice terminology for learn something new, you will upskill or you won't be here. Sounds like the stick to me. Whereas if I really want you to gain new skills, I need to figure out a carrot so that the skills you gain become long-term changes. So I told you I've been involved with tech for 5.5 decades, and I get nervous if change is not occurring. What I'm saying to you, get used to the idea that change is not going to be the change it was of 20 years ago, or for that matter, 20 months ago. Change is going to be ever present because this technology says once artificial intelligence, once agents, and the other offshoots of artificial intelligence occur, lots of things are going to change. The way businesses function will change. The way societies will change. The way governments operate will change. So unless you somehow or other have a space vehicle to get to another planet, get used to change. It's not going to go away. But that's not new. The difference is the speed and the width. How many things will be changing? That's the difference. So, what are your priorities with regard to AI and change and all this technology? Are you adventuresome? If you are, you're looking forward to it. Hey, something new. I can do it a different way. If I can have a bunch of clones, call them digital agents, out doing my work, I'm all for that. That allows me to go skiing or rollerblading or whatever else you want to do. So the adventuresome people, they're not going to have a problem here. Are you, on the other hand, cautious, where, I won't make that change until I see what somebody else does? Or, the show me approach, show me that it works, show me that it's beneficial, show me. That's cautious. Or are you the rebellious one, the one who says, I ain't changing? Well, guess what? You will change. It may not be pretty, it probably will be painful. You will change, and that change may be isolation. Because the way our societies work, there has to be a certain amount of sameness, there has to be a certain agreed upon compromise in order for the society to function properly. So you got to decide, what are your priorities? And for a lot of people, they don't really look at priorities the way I was brought up to look at priorities. I was brought up, get your education. Your education is going to dictate what jobs you can or cannot have. Based upon those jobs you can or cannot have will dictate your lifestyle. Nowadays, people are more interested in lifestyle, and everything else follows that. I'm not here to say that's good or bad. It's that this technology is going to force change. And rather than being forced, it's much easier and better if you embrace it. So let's talk about today's realities. AI's here, it's not going anywhere. Is it going to get better? Yes, it's going to get better. The thing that caused me to really start to pay more attention to AI, now I'm in technology, so I'm used to a lot of changes. But because there are so many changes, and there are so many technologies, I don't always pay attention to something that's really important. But as I started to monitor the re-emergence, like I said, this is the third coming of AI. As I started to monitor that, I started to realize something's different here. And as part of the hype, one of the lines that caught my attention was, AI is not going to replace you. A person who is using AI will replace you. Well, initially I thought, that's interesting. But then that's been pretty much true of most technologies. And then I kind of went off the deep end negatively, and I said, that statement, AI is not going to replace you. It's the person using AI is going to replace you. Sort of reminded me of the gun lobby. It's not a gun that kills people, it's a person using a gun that kills people. And I thought, maybe I'm just weird making that kind of comparison. But then as I saw how companies were starting to roll this out, I'm going like, well, maybe that comparison is not so bad after all. More the stick than the carrot, okay? So it's not going to go away. Too many people are involved, too much money is involved. People are now asking for not millions or hundreds of millions, but they're asking for hundreds of billions of dollars. So if you look at the people behind ChatGPT, they're talking about $1 trillion. For me, $1 million is difficult to imagine. $1 billion, I really have to sit down, see the number on paper, and go like, whoa, $1 trillion? My head explodes. But this is what they're talking about. You can't avoid it because it's seeping in all over the place. No matter where you look, if you know how to look, if you know what to look for, you're starting to see AI show up in those places. And if we can deliver on AI's labor reducing, then you will see it even more. So the question comes up, is AI good for human society or is it bad for human society? And I come down to the final answer, because I've been listening to a lot of people with degrees, PhDs, various letters behind their names, people who have been involved in this latest reincarnation of AI for the past 4 or 5 years. Yes, I know you may just be hearing about AI now, but as I started digging into it and assembling my AI lab, because I feel I have to have hands-on before I go out and talk about something, this reemergence of AI dates back to 2017 to the 2019 period, and we started to have something real in the 2019 to 2022 period, and they felt it was stable enough and useful enough. Late 2022, 2023, it got into the wild. It was no longer just within the laboratories. So how we implement AI is going to determine whether or not the long-term benefits are there or whether we've created bigger problems than we currently have. Now, when I was instructing technology with various companies around the planet, I would always caution them, you have to be careful that the solution to a problem does not create new problems. People hate problems. Remember, we're lazy. We like routines. We don't like problems. But if you give me something new and force me to change to that, and that new thing creates new problems that I don't know how to work with, I'm going to be hostile. The fact is, I'm going to go running back to the old method, even though the old method was not necessarily that good, simply because it's something that I know. So, be careful with how this gets implemented. You may have heard about the MIT study that says 95% of AI projects are failures. That raised my eyes. So I went and looked at the study. And what I found was something that I had seen and known about when I was teaching project management internationally. A lot of technologies get used the wrong way. So you'll hear the term use cases. How are you going to use this technology? What exactly is it good for? What is it bad for? And we have a problem, human behavior, that says when we hype something, we tend to label everything we can. Or as the old adage goes, hammer and nail, you get the hammer, everything looks like a nail. And that's what's happening with AI. But we've been there before, and so because we don't learn the lessons from history, we repeat history. So, are we in control of AI? That's the question that comes up. And my answer is yes and no. Yes, we're in control while AI is not mobile. Yes, we're in control because AI is not running all of our critical systems. And yes, we're in control, even though this last point may not seem that big right now, but human beings still think. And all of the technology that we have right now has to be initiated by a human being. Now you can say, well, Jean-Paul, certain things happen on a schedule. Well, somebody had to set the schedule, and somebody had to associate the schedule with the technology. So as long as it's not mobile, as long as the critical systems are still under human controls, and human beings continue to think, we're in control. But when I asked the question, I said yes and no. No, we're not in control once the AI becomes mobile. Earlier I said robots. Yes, we're already putting AI into robots. Now, they're not the classic robots that you see walking around just yet. And we've seen some robots if you watch YouTube, TV, and some of the other things. But I'm talking robots at this stage. All you have to do is look at the Ukraine-Russian issue that's going on right now. And a lot of those drones are using AI. Will AI come to us at a physical level? The answer is yes. We already see the early stages of robots. Will AI be running all of the critical systems? Well, if there's a profit margin in there? Is there a production efficiency in there? Is there a shortage of people, which is another topic that needs to be addressed relative to AI and technology? Because believe it or not, we are running out of people. The overpopulation issue is now in decline because of lower birth rates globally. So there may be a real push to have AI do more with systems because of people and the amount of time it takes to train people to be productive. Will human beings stop thinking? Well, we probably already see some of that in the laziness, because I go on a rant and rave every now and then about people don't think things through, people don't connect the dots, they don't see how things are connected. So we make it mobile, we give it control over critical systems, and we stop thinking, we've lost control. So specifically, what can you do? I recommend being an adopter. Don't react. Don't have it forced on you. Be an adopter. Because as an adopter, you're going to be able to influence the implementation. The people who get in early are going to be the ones that say it needs to go left at this point, it needs to go down at this point, it needs to go up at this point. If you are an adapter, you are dealing with what somebody else decided the AI needs to do. Creativity and judgment are the key skills of the future. Human beings are incredibly creative. We want that creativity to be positive. You continue to force things on people, that creativity will turn negative. That's what the Luddite thing was all about. Look it up with Google. So, remember, not everything can be automated. So, I'm going to come back to that closing point. Human beings are not totally replaceable yet. And even if we get to that point, I still think there will be human beings, because machines do not create out of nothing. Human beings do. And this hand attached to this arm, connected to this brain, can do a lot of things that mechanics can't do, that automation can't do. Just some thoughts from somebody who's been in the field of technology for 5.5 decades. Thank you for listening to me.